Hello, everybody. Today is Friday, April 10th, 2020. This is kops office hours. I am your moderator facilitator, Justin Santa Barbara. I work at Google. A reminder, this meeting is being recorded and will be put on the internet. And so please be mindful of our code of conduct, which boils down to be a good person. I have pasted a link to the agenda in the Zoom chat. Please feel free to add your name and any items you would like to cover to that agenda. Otherwise, we have some items on the agenda. We don't have as many as we sometimes have. And so we should get through them all. But let's start off with Hakman, you are here. Great. Oh, by the way, I see if people are not able to directly edit the doc, the meeting notes, you need to join either SIG cluster lifecycle mailing list or the I think SIG AWS mailing list. I'm just confirming those two, and then you will be allowed to post without approval, but otherwise we're happy to click yes on anyone that needs it. So Hakman, you have the first item about Travis CI integration.
So in the last 2 weeks, they changed something or they had an issue at some point. And for some of us, the CI doesn't update the status. So it's either pending or it's gone forever. So if I push a second time the branch, force push it, I get rid of Travis CI. This is kind of the only way I could commit something in the last week. Oh, it's very rare that I get a green light, even though if you go on the Travis link, you see it green.
That is unfortunate. I apologize for that.
It's not a big, well, let's say I can survive for some time, but it's annoying. It's with them because I also see it in other repos where I commit. So they suggested that the repo moves to the newer integration. I don't know, to migrate to GitHub Apps. I didn't look that much into it. Anyway, need someone with permissions for that.
Right, and this is actually probably a Kubernetes org level permission on the GitHub Kubernetes org. So it probably isn't something that, for example, I could do. We should probably talk to either Contribx or Test Infra. I think we do have a use case for continuing to use Travis, which is it is the only way that I know of that we can test on OS X, Mac OS, the thing formerly known as iOS, whatever that is. And so I think we want to keep that going. And I think cross-building to macOS is different. Can anyone confirm that? I don't know.
Cross-building from or to?
So if I cross-build from Linux to macOS, I think I get a different thing from when I build up directly on macOS.
I saw just cross-build from macOS to Linux, but maybe I missed something.
Yeah, I mean, we can and do build. Yeah, the thing we're trying to check with Travis is, can the kops CLI be built on macOS with effectively go build, or like without a bunch of options? And that's what I think we can only get from Travis, but maybe we can make do with other things. I suggest, why don't we keep an eye on this one? If it happens again, can you ping me on the PR? You probably didn't, I just missed it, I apologize. But if you ping me on the PR, I think we're getting closer on the PRs in terms of catching up. And so I should be able to be a little more responsive, and I can see what I can figure out as well. And we can maybe loop in, but we should probably loop in Contribx, who would be the people that would approve the change to a GitHub app. And hopefully this is just temporary, with everything being sort of overloaded right now in terms of all things computers and network. So yeah. Yes, I think if it happens again, let's try to capture that PR and ping Contrabex and myself, I think would be the right approach, particularly because moving to a GitHub app would be that level, I believe.
Okay, so I raised the ticket with Travis CI. I spent, I don't know, time with them, back and forth emails, and still they didn't manage to understand. Today they just emailed me saying that they forwarded to their engineering. So
okay, I see Guy. Thank you for doing that, by the way. I think Guy put the link in. I don't know.
Yeah, there was a few that hit me as well over the last week or so.
Yeah, particularly on a cherry pick, we probably don't need to worry about it too much. But yes, it certainly makes it harder because it presumably then it doesn't automatically merge. Is that right? Even with the proven LGTM?
Yeah.
If you force push it a second time or something, at some point Travis CI just gives up and doesn't appear, but doesn't seem like the right thing to do.
Yeah, and I don't know if you click into Travis CI, sometimes you can see the status of the various builders, and some people have permission to hit refresh on a job.
Yes,
I definitely doesn't work. All right.
Okay. Any member of the organization can do it. So I tried everything: force pushing, restarting.
Okay. All right. Well, there are some good. Thank you for the links, and we can have a look at and see what we can figure out. But it doesn't sound like it sounds like the apps thing is something that might fix it, but I'm not getting a sense of overwhelming confidence.
I'm not getting either, but let's see.
Okay. Let's keep going. Mazzy89. Is that Matt? No, who is that? Is Mazzy89 here?
Yeah, I think he is. No?
Salvatore? No, I don't see Salvatore. Okay. I actually had a look at this PR, I think 10 minutes ago, and I think I approved it. There are some things which I think we should change around. The big one is around enabled, but like a field, but I'm going to send a follow-on PR unless someone beats me to it. Just a bool versus pointer to bool problem or potential problem that I would be more comfortable if we didn't have to face. But I think that's in. That was one of the last blockers for 118. I have a sort of burn down list, so for 118 alpha. Okay, so I assume we've sort of dealt with that. Hackman, ARM64 support for worker nodes.
I gave it a try with some hacky branch, managed to get it running. Has to be done, more elegantly.
That sounds great. I don't know if we cut you off there. Sounds like we might have lost you.
Yeah, no, I was on mute. So sorry. So I gave it a try with a branch, with a hack branch, just to see if it works. It's not a huge change from what I saw. Just that we will have to start publishing various things for multi-architecture. And if we want to go to masters also, etcd manager and various things have to become multi-arch. But seems a bit too much for masters, at least at the moment.
I think where you started with just the nodes is a really great place to start. And we can sort of get a good feel for it. I don't know if you've sent that as a PR. I personally would love to see this. I don't know if others would love to see it. We might be able to put off Windows forever. I don't think we can put off ARM64 forever. And I suspect we won't be able to put off Windows forever either. So ARM64 feels less different than Windows is going to be. So
yeah, it's much simpler. So I didn't have time to make it, let's say, a bit more elegant. Once I get it running, so in the next few weeks, I should have the PR available. And it's good that it probably can be part of even 118 because it doesn't affect anything, or I don't know. It's just an extra if else load the following artifacts.
Okay. Well, I look forward to seeing the PR.
Let's see.
Yeah. I don't know if anyone else has any thoughts on that or any reasons not to do this. I can't think of any, but.
We'll be able to use the ARMS instance types in our E2E jobs to confirm the support. So that'll be good.
Thank you. That would be really good. Yeah. And I know it seems like AWS is doing more of the ARM instance families. So I think it's definitely something that is coming to the world. So this time it's real. John, thank you. So thank you for that, Hackman. John, you have the next item on the agenda. 8826, how quickly do we want to remove the legacy etcd provider?
Yes, so I put in a PR which does sort of the slowest possible approach, which is to remove it or to refuse to run it on Kubernetes 118 and later. We could just say it's gone, or we could do anything in between. And it seems people want to do something that's a little bit faster than 118 Kubernetes and later.
Thank you for bringing it up. I think this is the right venue. I think what it looks like you did here, which is like making it an error, but not totally removing it, feels reasonable to me. I don't know how other people feel.
Well, a lot of the feedback I got was that was too slow.
Okay.
So.
All right. Yeah, I mean, I think, yeah. That must be a change of, change of roles. The primary value I can think of for the legacy etcd provider is it more closely matches the way we would want to structure a future etcd manager, which doesn't have everything baked in, but that is, we can easily get it from code, and that is the least of the problems around that. So I'm inclined to I'm always let's take things a little more gradually. So could someone that wants to do it faster make the case, I guess? Or should I just read the PR comments?
Well, I guess you'll have to read the PR comments because I'm not hearing anything.
Yeah, I think I do agree with you, John, in that the Kubernetes, the argument for tying things to Kubernetes version, I'll put this on the PR, but the argument for tying these to Kubernetes versions rather than kops versions is we don't want to have to support older kops versions. We don't want people to say, well, I'm going to use kops 1.14 because it was the last version that had feature X. We want it to be bits. That's why we tie things to Kubernetes versions. So I think it sounded like that was the nature of the objection, and I think that's the way you've done it, John, is more in keeping with how we do things. So I will post that comment on that PR.
Okay.
You also have the next one, John, which is and cluster validation.
Or 8868 in cluster validation. It's actually part of the sentence. Somebody, or Jesse Haka had another batch of failed rolling updates. This time it was due to API server becoming pending after the cluster validated. And so he opened 8868, which merged in record time. And I'm not really happy about what actually is in 8868, besides having numerous issues. What that does is adds a new parameter to not proceed on rolling updates until you pass cluster validation some user specified number of times, and it also removes the 10-second wait between those successful validations. I mean, I would rather get down to investigate and fix the underlying issue. As I see it so far, the underlying issue is that nodes mark that they are ready when they are in fact not ready. We have a workaround, which is cluster validation, but cluster validation is marking the cluster as validated when the cluster is not ready. And
yes, and I think we talked about this before, right? And we agreed, I think what you're outlining here, John, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, but that was different. That was validate cluster. It was a different command, which we made it fail if it didn't happen like that. But in this case, with all due respect, people don't use rolling update for testing. They use it for production. So I don't really want to see it fail so that I can report the bug. I want it to work to rolling update until, wait until it's ready and then move over and so on. I don't think it's okay to make it fail just so we can see why. If it cannot fail, retrying depends on people. If they specify the parameter, it should have that parameter and let people do it.
I think you both raised excellent points. I think it looks like the default didn't change in terms of the validate count. Is that true?
Yes.
Yes, it did, actually. Previously, it would validate twice for every instance group, and now it validates, I think, twice for the first instance group, but it doesn't. But now it no longer waits between those two validations, and subsequent instance groups only validate once.
Okay. So I mean, I think Hakan, would you be okay if we changed it to continue to validate every instance group n times?
Of course, and also change the timer to 5 seconds or something. 10 seconds seems quite excessive.
Well, let me address that comment there, which is if we paper it over with this sort of thing, we're not going to get that information and we're not going to fix the problem. And we seem to be optimizing for the thing stopping, but what's going to happen is it's going to proceed to the next instance group when the cluster is not ready, or actually it only fails when it goes between one instance group and another. But if we paper over those failures, it's going to go from one node to another in an instance group, and your workload is going to fail. We're going to have something like taking down 2 etcd nodes at the same time. We need to get this feedback. We can't solve the problem without reports.
I agree with that. Can we make sure that feedback is? Can we? I think Hackman was saying, like, can we get that feedback in our tests? And I think that's a good way. I think it would be nice to surface. I don't know if there's a way we can surface the error, like saying, please report this, without hurting someone's cluster.
So I understand what John is saying. He's worried that the cluster is not actually right. I'm just advocating for having to have 2 or whatever number of continuous successes the person chooses. I think that was the point of that PR. So that it doesn't fail,
because right now it only fails when you go to a new instance group, and that is because I fixed a bug where we currently do a check before we start rolling an instance group, and that particular check doesn't retry. If that check fails, the whole thing stops. And the bug was it was previously ignoring validation failures. So it would validate, ignore the failures, and then proceed.
Okay, so
and now it actually stops the whole thing. Now, if we want to paper it over, we could paper it over by having that first one validate for some amount of time before it actually succeeds.
Which is the later MR I have in the list.
But then we would still have the problem of, if it's flapping and returning success incorrectly, we're going to be rolling to the next thing before the cluster's ready. The 2 failures we've seen, one was, the first one was that the controller manager was going pending. And so I added a check to make sure that every master had a controller manager pod. Now it's API server. So I think there's a problem where static pods that a node can validate successfully before the API server even knows that the static pods exist.
That sounds very likely.
And I think that's one of the core problems we need to address. But there might be others. But if we paper over the symptoms, we're not going to know about them.
Yeah.
So we're hitting that case of the initial validation failing because right before we start the rolling update on our masters, we're scaling down the cluster autoscaler, which is running in kube system. And because that pod happens to be going pending, like it tries to do the validation and sees that's pending and fails. And so we put a retry in for that.
Well, look, it sounds like we need to I like make sure that the behavior is what we want before we do 118. I've put it as a blocker for 118 alpha. I don't know if there's a particular set of changes, but I will certainly take a look at this. And if there are, it sounds like Ryan, you might have a PR, and we should try to like treat this as a high priority to figure out what the behavior should be and try to find a compromise. I don't know if there's any decision I guess we can reach here.
Well, I think the main thing is, how are we going to find the data to know how these clusters are behaving?
Yeah, I mean,
what is actually happening when these pods, when these nodes are coming up, so we can actually put in the right set of checks.
And I think Hackman made a great point about the, like, let's make sure our E2E does not paper over it no matter what. And then what I'm wondering is, can we like surface it without, can we do the right thing and still surface, can we do the best thing we can do for the user and still surface the error in a way that we get the report? Like some form of message with, while still doing the right thing? I don't know.
I mean, yeah, I mean, does somebody have the resources to actually do some measuring? I know I don't. I wish I did, but and this is actually might be an issue in KK, because I'm sure cluster API is going to have this problem. If they're only working off of the node readiness, they're going to go super speed and roll things well before they're ready.
They already do it. we are safer because we run validate right now before proceeding.
Yeah, but in my opinion, validate is papering over the problem of node readiness.
Yeah, I mean, node readiness has a number of known issues like this. The other one that really bothers me is network readiness is not always accurately reported. So a node can be considered ready before, for example, like if you're using the AWS routes mapping, like there's no guarantee the route mapping has been set up before it's a separate controller. So yeah.
Well, yeah, it's definitely ready before the CNI is ready. I mean, the CNI daemon set pods can be, not even pending, and I'll say it's ready. So
yes, this is one of those ones that has descended into like upstream finger pointing and not a lot of progress, which is disappointing. And I guess that is why we have the validate, because ideally we would just be able to look at node status, and I think there is slow progress being made. I don't know that it's great.
But yeah, but we need to figure out, okay, so one more immediate problem is, okay, how can we know that the API server knows about all the static pods before we say a node is validated? Now, for a master, we have a list of static pods that we can just check them all.
Yes.
And maybe that's what we do, but that won't cover the case of anyone having any extra static pods lying around.
That is true. I think maybe we can encourage more additional static pods to run as daemon sets. And so we do end up with a fairly static list of static pods.
Yeah.
Yeah,
maybe it's fine to just say, okay, only the master has static pods.
Or yeah, and like kube proxy is the obvious, like, ideally one day we'll get kube proxy to a daemon set, and which has its own challenges because of like skew and architecture. Yeah.
Or maybe it's the master plus kube proxy.
But not everyone runs kube proxy. Yes, this rabbit hole goes pretty deep. So yes, I as the action item, I have put put this on the list as a 118 blocker to figure out what we want the behavior to be for 118 or 118 alpha. I don't know that, yeah, it sounds like we should address that, but I don't know that there's much more we can figure out here. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Can we move
I mean,
on?
additionally, I'd actually like to get rid of those rechecks and get it to work the first time, but.
There is a flapping concern, right? I actually see someone wrote flapping.
If we can keep it from flapping.
Yes, and I don't know how we would ever, like, it's only a heuristic, right? To say like X and it works now and it works 5 seconds later, so therefore it's not flapping. That's a pure heuristic, but it's a reasonable heuristic. I don't know.
Okay, I understand what you're saying, but people also want to be able to do rolling update. So I may agree that we can have, let's say, the default set to 0 or something, 0 rechecks. But once a person gets into a problem with rolling update, he will want to just fix it, not wait 3 months for a new version. Maybe it's just me, but that's how I see it. Otherwise, you will have to do rolling update manually.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable, and I think we just need to figure out how a good balance between not papering over the cracks, giving the right user experience, getting the data, and trying to like be a more accurate validate, right? That actually like detects some of this stuff. Yeah, and like being mindful of what's coming from upstream in terms of node readiness that may negate some of the need for this, but that's not happening particularly rapidly. We spent a long time on this. I ask that we keep going. Is that okay?
Yep.
Yeah. So John, you actually have the next one, which is around the PR, which I was supposed to have a look at around replace before version field for channel.
Yeah, I just was say we kind of want to get moving on core DNS, and this is a blocker.
Is that a blocker for core DNS? All right.
Yeah, because we need to fix core. We want to remove privileges from core DNS.
Okay, let's put that as in the blocker for 118 list, and I will have a look at that. I think that what I said before was I know that there are efforts looking at this space, and I will try to find out where they all are.
Yeah.
And I did not have the chance to do that. I apologize.
And the next one is, I believe, a 117 blocker. I haven't seen a lot of movement on Flannel, and I think at this point, I think we should just pull the plug on it.
Okay.
And then if they ever fix it, we put it back.
Yeah, and if they ever fixed it, we'd have to update.
We'd have to update Flannel anyway, so.
That seems reasonable at this point. I think you're not. I think you previously described this as removing it, but I think that you are merely preventing it through validation type thing.
Yeah, preventing validation for 117 and later.
Yes, and we can remove that as and when they do fix it. I think that's actually reasonable. So I will. I see it's already marked as a blocker to make a decision on 8614. So let's proceed with that. And yeah, we're proceeding with merging on the basis that we'd have to update the final version anyway. Hackman, you have the next issue around Docker.
Hello.
We can hear you. Yes. Do you want to talk to us?
I can't hear anything.
Oh, you can't hear us? Okay, well, we are talking to you. I'm going to say, we'll come back to you because we can hear you. Oh,
Justin was muted for a second, but now he's back.
Can people hear me? I'm confused. Yeah, okay.
Yes.
All right, thank you. And so when Hackman comes back, we'll come back to his QNAP Docker issues. Oh, there he is. Hackman, can you hear us now? Cyprian? Okay, we will come back.
Yeah.
Oh, there you are. Can you hear us?
Yes.
Okay, Docker version issues.
So while cleaning up the removed Docker versions, so for which we don't have repos anymore, notice that there is quite a mess in the older versions. So my proposal was to remove some of them, like the duplicates. Duplicates, like I wrote there, it's 18.06.1, 2, and 3. People should use, even if they want to use 18.06, should use the latest available. I don't see any reason to have all of them.
Is there any motivation for doing so other than the cleanliness of our code? Because I guess my concern is, suppose someone has happily using 18.06.1 and has, for whatever reason, tested that 18.06.3 breaks their workloads, and then we come along and we say, you can't do that. I would be much, I mean, I know they shouldn't be doing any of this, but that's what I'm sort of trying to balance.
There is also a gap there, sorry. Some have just one distro supported or things like that. That's, you know, it's not even that we support those fully.
Yeah, I'm not saying we should go and add the missing support for missing distros. I'm saying we should just avoid breaking existing users that might be happy, perhaps based on what our thing was. John, did you?
My suggestion would be to refuse them for newer versions of Kubernetes.
As in a validation type block?
Yep.
I think that works for me, because then we have a mechanism by which we can discover if users are actually doing this and have a conversation with them about why they're using 18.06.
Mm-hmm. So we already have some mechanism of, right now we validate what users can set up in their cluster spec. We could, in theory, set a minimum Docker version for some Kubernetes release.
Like for 118, for example. Kubernetes 118, I should say. I think that's a reasonable, that then gives us a guard that means we can then remove this code safely in the next version. And it also helps users upgrade to Docker that may have, for whatever reason, had that version pinned, for example. Upgrade to a newer Docker that might have had that version pinned. So so adding validation, and then later, like in the next release, removing the actual versions on the assumption that users will have had the chance by running kops 118 to observe that. Actually, I guess that's not technically true. I guess it's more complicated than that. But yeah, at the appropriate time. So at least we have a path for ordered removal. And I know it will likely be longer than we want to, but we can talk about narrowing the window even further if we need to. The support window of Kubernetes versions.
Okay, sounds cool.
Awesome, thank you. Matt Shipman, a kuberouter fix.
Yeah, there was a regression for kuberouter in 116, and I believe we fixed the test coverage here as well, so we can start detecting these. But there's a cherry pick now to backport this to 116, and unless we cut a patch here, it's going to require anybody using kuberouter manually intervenes for an upgrade to succeed.
Okay, cool. I mean, this sounds like a good reason to do a 116.1. I'm surprised we're not higher than that, but yes, let's do a new version of kops. You said there's, thank you, John, or yes, thank you. You said there's test coverage. Is that like kops EDE test coverage?
Yeah, I believe, and I did not add it. I think Peter might have added it, so he might be able to speak more to this, but it looks like we added EDE coverage to test for kuberouter. There currently wasn't anything there, and we should be able to see these failures now.
That's wonderful news. Yeah, I mean, I think that's great. I think, and so there's an open cherry pick that we need to, oh, sorry, the cherry pick has been cherry picked. We just need to do the release to actually like ship it.
That's correct.
Perfect. I think we should definitely do that. I think we should do that. Any objections or any other things people want in 116, I guess? Okay, so I'll do that. I think we're actually very close to cutting 118, the next 118 alpha, or the first 118 alpha I thought, but the next 118. And I just didn't see the point of doing it last, 2 minutes before the meeting. So I will do that, I guess, after the meeting. While we're on the topic, I also have been catching up on YouTube uploads. I am able to do, I think, 5 a day because I am sticking to using the API because I refuse to click in a GUI. I have written an uploader, and that only allows me to upload 5 a day. But we will get there at 5 a day. So I think we made it to the end of January. So we are 2 days behind, I think, maybe 3 days behind, depending on my math. Okay. Ryan, initial validation during rolling update does a single try, which is very related, I think, to our other topic, right?
Yep. Yeah, that's what we were hitting on there. Is that first validation check during the rolling update does the single try right now. I did an update just to make it use the same wait functions that we have to validate to do multiple checks. The question is, I guess, well, 2 questions. One, is that the right approach? Is that what we want to do, which we were discussing? And then 2, if we do merge this in, the static test failed before because it was the only thing that was still using the validate cluster function, it looks like. So do we want to remove that function, or should I just mark it as ignore in case people are somehow using that from, some other code that they're integrating with?
I'm sorry, the static function?
The validate cluster function, one of the static checks that ran during the build failed because nothing is actually using that now.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay.
Yep.
Yes, in that case, you should probably remove. It's a private. It's a non-exported function. So
yeah.
Well, the logging is a little different between the two, and you might, because the one that retries is a little bit noisy, and you don't necessarily want to do a lot of logging on the first validation. So I think there's a slight, we might want a slight difference between those 2 modes. The downside of retrying on that one is you'll paper over the problems. And that's about it.
Yeah, and I'm willing to look at other approaches there. We've patched it in ours for now, so on our custom build, so we're good. We just want to make sure it gets upstream, so we don't have to keep patching.
Okay. Well, I don't know what the right. Thank you for this, by the way. I don't know what the right. How we can have a conversation around this issue in a sort of structured way.
I think a PR would be a structured way of doing it. Please don't
fast merge
very quickly at merging until we've completed the conversation.
Sounds fine. I am happy. I'm happy to drive that PR unless other people want to drive it.
I can drive it.
Okay.
I have the most cluster validation.
Yes, that's right
now. So.
Okay. Yeah, that would be great. Yeah, if you do that, please CC me at least. Although I'm actually sort of more fast pulling these things now, but
yep.
Yeah, that we can figure it out.
I'll have a PR on that.
Cool. Thank you,
John. I see you grabbed the bug I filed on the rolling updates for the nodes going away during the rolling update. If you fix that, you're my hero. Just FYI, I haven't had a chance to look at it yet, but it's been bugging me for about 3 versions now, and I haven't gotten to it. So
I think it's a case of ignoring that error, or determining it was that error and ignoring it. So
yeah.
Yeah, and I just want to say thank you to everyone that merges the PRs. It can be I make mistakes, people make mistakes, and it's always a balance between merging and trying to get the right balance. And I think if we never made a mistake, we'd be going too slowly. And so I think as it's great. So thank you to everyone that merges PRs, and thank you to everyone that comments when we do make mistakes. It's thankless, and but it's also important because otherwise we would never get a release done. So thank you for the mergers, and thank you for the cleanup and the people that bring it to people's attention. So thank you, everyone. We are at the end of our agenda. I don't know if there are any other agenda items. Otherwise, we can jump into the release plan.
I wanted to ask you about your moving to 1.8.0 Yes, I wrote in the PR, but simpler here. Do you want first to replace with 1.18.1? If
yeah.
Or
so this is by way of background. This is a PR I put up which updated our Kubernetes version to 1.8. Sorry, the version of our Kubernetes libraries, in particular API machinery and friends. We thankfully no longer depend on KK. Updates it to 1.18. The gotcha, which everyone will notice very shortly, is 1.18 client Go adds a context, basically changes the signature of all the calls. It adds a context. It also requires an options as the finalish parameter on all methods, whereas previously it was only on maybe update and list, and now there is a read options, there is a patch options, there are these things. So there is a ton of context threading that happens, and I don't think that's a bad thing. It's just particularly now it's done. It was a little tedious to do, but it's fine. And then I think Hackman raised a good point, which is at the time I started, before I threaded through the context, it was 1.18.0. In the interim, they released 1.18.1. And so I will probably update to 1.18.1. In general, we don't follow it patch by patch unless we actually see something we need to. In this case, it feels like there's no point going with 1.18 unless there's no point with going 1.18.0 when 1.18.1 is right there. It just is a rebase I have to do. So I will do that.
That's why I mentioned it.
Yeah, thank you. But we're not. I don't think in general we should because API machinery updated to 1.18.3, we should not necessarily go to 1.18.3. But we should in general we should do judgment calls. Okay. Any other topics before we go through the release plan? Okay. I'm going to create the Buster APIs beneath the other two. But it remains on my agenda, but I feel like it's becoming embarrassing at this point. So I'm gonna deprioritize it from the list so I can feel better about myself. So as discussed, we will do a 1.16.1, including, I guess that's 8864. Thank you to whoever put that in. And presumably there'll be some other deltas. If anyone else thinks of anything they need to get into 1.16 or thinks everything that should be 1.16, please cherry pick it with due haste. But I won't get to it till this evening anyway, so moderate haste. And we will do the blockers for 1.18 alpha are this new behavior in around the rolling update and validation. The decision around replace before version. I'm guessing actually the 8614 is also a blocker here, right? The decision around flannel. It's also a blocker for 1.18.
Well, I'm not sure it has to be a blocker for the alpha, but
that's fair.
Yeah, it's just an alpha.
In practice, it's going to go into 1.18 first. So, but yes, and replace before a version decision, and then we can cut the 1.18 branch. Yes, we will cut the 1.18 branch when we should cut the 1.18 branch. And then we have.
Can I ask, why do we want to branch right now?
You're right. We normally do it at the beta. So there is a question mark here. I don't know how people feel whether we want to cut the 1.18 branch. I feel like we want to try to encourage stability faster. Kubernetes 1.18 has shipped, so.
Yes, but it will be another 3 months before we release it, right?
Kops 1.18? I hope not. I would hope we do a beta actually. Like, we do want to get to the point where we have a beta that works from the kops point of view at the same time as Kubernetes releases. And then we essentially will go stable when the ecosystem is stable. From that point of view, and typically we have tied the beta we've tied the release branch cut to a beta in the past. We don't have to cut the release. I
added that just as a thought. So if we want to wait till the beta, I think that's fine.
But do we see anything that we need before cutting the beta? I mean, does anyone know anything unstable, let's say, besides the rolling updates?
Are you suggesting we could just go to beta now?
If we want to have a beta sooner, I guess we could sort out the rolling update and we can just cut it after that.
Yeah, I guess sorry.
Yeah, that's what I meant. I really wanted to see why we wait for the beta.
Yeah, I just felt intuitively that we weren't, like my feeling was that we weren't necessarily ready for a beta, but I liked the idea of cutting the branch because it would help us get to beta faster. That was my sort of intuition. I don't know how other people feel about whether we are ready for a 1.18.0 beta.
I'd kind of like to get privileges out of core DNS, but I suppose that could be a 1.19 or could be cherry picked.
Yeah, that is definitely a sort of important feature that we would want to,
like resolving the outstanding questions around the rolling update and then cutting the beta.
regardless, we have to cut the branch.
Yeah.
Why don't we cut the branch?
One impact of cutting the branch is that all of our periodic E2E jobs run off of master. So we will start diverging our signal, basically.
Okay. Good point. Okay, so why don't we have we done an alpha of 1.18 or not? I didn't think we had, but someone wrote alpha 3, so now I'm
Yeah, we have 2 alphas.
Okay, all right.
I mean, the main thing is, do we have things that we want to start in on 1.19? Has anyone got PRs that they want that don't go into 1.18? That's what we have to create a branch.
Yes, I mean, I've started tagging things for 1.19, but it's more like not a 1.18 blocker. Like I actually started on the reflection thing, but I put the work in progress reflection setter in 1.19, and I also therefore tagged set instance group as for 1.19. And there also I put all my work in progress PRs into 1.19, as in like these are not going to make 1.18, so there's like just get them off my screen. And actually, when we do that, we are below 50 PRs, which is something I've never seen. If we exclude work in progress and exclude everything already triaged to 1.19, so that's really good. Thank you to everyone that drove that. But yeah, are there any other things that people are there any things that people are, as John asked, aching to get in? Okay, so why don't we keep let's see where we are after the, it sounds like we're probably ready for a beta if we feel that we reach a good conclusion on the open items. Is that fair? And John, your replace 4 version is in that list, I think. Yes. Dissenters, approvers.
So is that a yes or a no on cutting the release branch?
I believe it's a no at the moment for cutting the release branch, continuing to tie the release branch to the beta. And well, maybe not continuing to tie the release, not cutting the release branch before the beta. Your point about the signal being well made, and like we want to keep as much signal as we can on that 1.18 beta, but when it does arrive. I don't think we're sort of tentatively saying we might do a beta before our next meeting if we decide that that we have a good resolution on these items. And just looking at the 1.17 blockers, there is the decision on the flannel and then the decision on IP tables.
So for IP tables, I think I can add the release note how to set up with additional user data, and it can be not a blocker.
Okay, yeah, it would be great to see that PR, I think.
Yeah, we did make a decision on 8614, so.
We did or did not, sorry.
We did. So
Oh,
now
yes.
we just need to get it in.
Yes, so it's so it's not a decision on, it is a merge 8614, merge 8614. Okay, cherry pick, I guess. Merge and cherry pick.
So the PR listed for IP tables is just something that disables Docker by default. So it's not the PR, because we didn't agree if we do it in Node app or with additional user data. Well,
okay.
But that image builder PR, maybe, I mean, it's an easy PR. If you have time to look at it, okay. If not, it's not a major thing.
Okay, thank you. I hope to have time. I think, thank you to everyone that actually has done a wonderful job of clearing most of the backlog of PRs. That has been super helpful to everyone that's been doing that. We have 3 minutes remaining in our scheduled time. I don't know if there are any final issues or final topics that we want to discuss.
I don't know, KubeCon? Just kidding.
KubeCon is now rescheduled to August. No, I don't remember. August? July? August.
Let's see how things go in Europe.
Yes, that was my sort of feeling. I have not yet decided either way.
And in Europe, at least from what I see, the feeling is that big meetings will not be possible for some time. So KubeCon kind of goes into that category.
That's very interesting. Yeah, okay.
And we have restrictions here, like you cannot have be more than, I don't know, 5-10 people in the same place. So even after relaxing, they say maybe 100.
We are only in April, so there are months to go. But yes, I think it'll be interesting to see. I think we'll hope that we will all see each other in KubeCon in August. That would be wonderful. But yeah. If there's nothing else, I guess I will draw the meeting to a close. All right. Thank you, everybody. Happy weekend, happy Friday, and see you in 2 weeks.
Thank you. See you.